I wasn't supposed to be home that early. Fridays were usually my long days, and Lena knew that. I told her I'd be working late to wrap up a vendor contract. Maybe grab a beer with Nate afterward. But the meeting ended early. Nate bailed, and I figured, why not surprise her? I even stopped to pick up her favorite lemon pesto pasta from that place she loves but always pretends is too expensive for a weeknight. The house felt quiet when I stepped in. Peaceful at first. The kind of quiet you don't question after a long day, until you listen a little closer. And then I heard it. Her voice. Faint, coming from upstairs. Laughing. I wasn't eavesdropping at first. I was just heading up to drop my keys and change into something less office-shaped. But as I climbed the stairs, something made me slow down. It wasn't just the sound of her voice. It was how she was speaking. Soft, low. The way she talks when she doesn't want someone to hear. Like she's saving her smile for someone else. I stopped at the top step. The door to our bedroom was half open. She was sitting on the floor in front of the bed. Legs folded. Her laptop open in front of her. Phone propped up like a little screen. She hadn't noticed me yet. She was wearing a shirt I didn't recognize. Gray, a little oversized, hanging loose over one shoulder. It looked lived in. Not like something she'd just bought. Like something she'd borrowed. I remember that weird little detail, the shoulder slipping down. That was when my stomach started to turn. On the screen was a guy. Mid-30s, dark hair, kind of a smug smile. Not in a suit, not in a meeting. Not looking very editorial. I didn't catch everything he was saying, but I got the part that mattered. Right before she saw me. I miss you when you're around him. She tapped the screen instantly. Video minimized. Phone tossed onto the bed like it was suddenly on fire. Then she looked at me. No guilt. No panic. Just mild annoyance. Like I'd interrupted her folding laundry. You're home early, she said flatly. Yeah, I replied, stepping further into the room. Thought I'd surprise you. She raised an eyebrow. I was on a call. I nodded. Yeah, I saw. That's when the shift happened. Her tone changed, not to explain but to defend. It's just an editor from work, she said quickly. We were discussing the publishing schedule. He's from the New York office. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't have to. She could see in my face that I wasn't buying it. She scoffed. Actually scoffed. And picked up the phone again, like I was the one being unreasonable. Oh my God, she muttered. Don't do this. Seriously, Mark? What are you spying on me now? The accusation hung in the air like smoke. I hadn't said a word. Not one. But in that moment I became the problem. I became the paranoid husband, the jealous man. Her tone wasn't defensive, it was offensive. Preemptive strike. Jesus, you're so controlling sometimes, she added, not looking at me. I'm allowed to have private conversations without you lurking in the hallway. Still, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask questions. But I watched her carefully as she spoke. How she kept her eyes on the wall behind me, not on my face. How her fingers curled tighter around the phone. How she started talking faster, angrier, before I even opened my mouth. Because she knew. She knew I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. And I knew that too. I should have asked who he was. I should have asked why he said he missed her when she was around me. Why she minimized the call like it was radioactive. Why she was wearing a shirt I'd never seen before. But I didn't. Because I already knew none of those questions would get me the truth. At best, they'd get me new lies. At worst, another outburst about privacy and space, and how I don't trust her. So I didn't ask. I just nodded and said, okay. Then I left the room. But what I didn't say and what she didn't notice is that from that moment on, everything changed. That one call, that one line from a man I didn't know, cracked something open in me. Not all at once. Not an explosion. More like a hairline fracture you can't unsee once you notice it. I went back downstairs. I even unpacked the pasta like nothing happened. She didn't follow me. We didn't eat together. She stayed up there, door shut, probably texting him, probably telling him some version of the story where I was crazy or insecure or being weird again. She didn't realize I heard the words. All of them. I miss you when you're around him. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't friendly. It was possession. Int asterisk Macy. Something that shouldn't exist between two coworkers. It didn't matter if she claimed it was nothing. It didn't matter if they hadn't done anything. It didn't even matter if she still insisted they were just talking deadlines. I saw her face when he said it. I saw how quickly she shut it down. Not with guilt, but with panic. Like a kid caught with her hand in a jar she wasn't supposed to open. Not because she didn't want what was in it, but because someone saw her. That night we barely spoke. She didn't bring it up again and I didn't push. She laughed at something on her phone during dinner. I just watched her. Really watched her. And I realized how many little things I'd been ignoring lately. The late-night editing sessions that never used to happen. The sudden change in phone behavior. Screens flipped down. Notifications muted. The new passwords on her tablet. The way she started sleeping with it under her pillow. I brushed it all off. Gave her the benefit of the doubt because she's always been independent. I never wanted to be that guy, the clingy one, the insecure one. I trusted her. I built this whole relationship on trust. But that one sentence from a stranger's mouth shattered that illusion. That night, when she finally came downstairs, she acted like nothing happened. Made herself tea. Asked me what movie I was watching. I said, just flipping channels. She nodded. Sat on the other couch. Started scrolling again. Probably texting him. Probably laughing. But I didn't ask. I didn't show anger. I didn't accuse. I just started remembering. All the things I used to ignore. All the moments I now had to revisit through a new lens. That's when I understood this wasn't paranoia. This wasn't me being jealous. This was instinct. And that instinct had just been confirmed in high definition. I didn't say it out loud, but I made a quiet promise to myself that night. If she was hiding something, I'd find it. And if I was right, I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't beg. I'd simply leave her with the one thing she gave me that night. Silence. After that night, nothing exploded. There wasn't some massive fight or late-night confession or suitcase at the door. No yelling. No apologies. Just life. Or some imitation of it. That's what made it worse. Lena acted like nothing had changed. She still put almond milk in her coffee. Still watched her dumb true crime shows late at night. Still kissed me on the cheek before bed. Sometimes. But it wasn't the same. And maybe she thought I wouldn't notice that if she kept up the routine, I'd fall for the rhythm. But I wasn't sleepwalking anymore. Once you hear a stranger say, I miss you when you're around him, while your wife's wearing another man's shirt, something in your brain reboots. You start playing back scenes like a detective going over old security footage. And when you do, you start seeing it not as isolated quirks or off days, but as part of a pattern. A story. A mosaic. And suddenly, everything that didn't make sense before starts to fit. She used to leave her tablet on the kitchen counter. Wide open. She'd scroll recipes or random articles or half-written notes for work. I never touched it. I didn't need to. But about 2 months before the call, that changed. First, she added a fingerprint lock. Then, a new passcode. Then the tablet stopped appearing in the kitchen at all. Now it was always charging, always in the bedroom, or in her bag, zipped up like a vault. I asked her once, casually, did you change your password? I was going to check if we still had that pasta recipe saved. She smiled, tight. Yeah, had to for work. Company policy. Work. That word started doing a lot of heavy lifting in our conversations. She was working late more. Not at the office, at cafes, co-working spaces, wherever had good Wi-Fi, she said. I believed her at first. But then it turned into 9 p.m. coffees. 10 p.m. walks to clear her head. Sometimes she'd come back smelling like cologne. Not mine. Not strong, just faint, like an accidental brush on someone's shirt. But enough to notice. One night I said, half joking, you're drinking more coffee at 10 p.m. than I do in the morning. She just rolled her eyes. What, are you clocking me now? That was becoming her thing. Deflect, accuse, change the subject. I asked once, again gently, Why she suddenly had a lock screen photo of a city skyline. She used to have a photo of us. From that trip to Seattle, where we stayed in a tiny Airbnb, and she made me laugh so hard I dropped an entire cup of chowder on my jeans. Now, just buildings. Cold and neutral. She said, I needed a change. That sentence echoed. I needed a change. She also started wearing lipstick again. Not for me. Not when we went out together. But when she left alone, those coffee breaks and late-night strolls. And she'd reapply right before walking out. I caught her once in the hallway mirror, putting on eyeliner like she was about to walk into an interview. Meeting someone? I asked, half knowing. She didn't even turn around. Meeting myself, she said with a smirk. Is that okay with you, Mark? And I said nothing, because what was I supposed to say? I started noticing how she stopped laughing at my jokes. Lena used to be the kind of person who cracked up if I dropped a dumb pun while cooking or made a sarcastic comment about her murder shows. Now, blank face. Or worse, that small, exhausted sigh. Like my very existence was a noise she couldn't turn off. Conversations became landmines. If I asked too many questions, I was being clingy. If I said too little, I was cold. I felt like I was playing a game with rules that kept changing. I remember one night she walked in with shopping bags from stores she never used to go to. Trendy boutiques. Expensive ones. She dropped them on the couch and said, felt like treating myself. I raised an eyebrow. We're still on that budgeting plan, right? She snapped. Not loudly but sharply. Jesus, Mark. I work too, remember? You don't control what I do with my money. Which was funny, considering we used to laugh about our shared bank account. Used to plan trips together, argue about grocery points and digital coupons. Now suddenly everything was hers and mine. I didn't respond that night either. But I remembered. I remembered how she used to hold my hand in public without thinking. Now she barely touched me at all. I'd brush against her in the hallway, and she'd flinch. Not obviously, not in disgust, just enough to feel like I was unwelcome. Like I was some awkward roommate instead of the man she married. It's strange when someone stops loving you while still living in the same house. There's no announcement, no fireworks. There's just small absences piling up like dust. Her eyes stopped lingering. Her voice lost softness. And her presence, while still physically there, felt like an echo of someone who had already left. But I still held out hope. Because that's what you do when you've built a life with someone. You want to believe that you're wrong, that it's stress, that maybe she's going through something and doesn't know how to talk about it. So I waited, I watched, and I started testing little things. I asked if she wanted to go out. Just us. We haven't had a date night in a while. She hesitated, said she had plans already, with the team. So I tried again. A movie, a quick dinner, something spontaneous. She declined, said she was tired. Then spent the next 2 hours on a FaceTime call in the guest room with the door shut. When I knocked and asked if everything was okay, she opened the door just wide enough to say, "It's a team call," then closed it again without waiting for a reply. Team, right? Even when we did go out, she'd spend half the time on her phone, smiling at it, laughing into it, not once turning the screen so I could see, just a tilted screen, a tight-lipped smirk, and the occasional, "It's work stuff." I stopped asking, but I started checking timestamps. I started listening harder. I noticed the phone was never left unattended anymore. She'd take it into the bathroom, into the shower. I once heard the sound of a voice coming through the speaker while she was in there. I called her name. She turned the water off instantly. A minute later, she came out in a towel, hair dry, and said, "What?" I wasn't talking to anyone. The gaslighting wasn't blatant. It was slow, subtle, death by emotional paper cuts. I didn't want to spy on her. I didn't want to become that guy, the one who snoops through emails or reads texts in the middle of the night. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding pieces of herself behind a curtain I was no longer allowed to look past. So I started documenting, quietly, not to catch her, but to confirm I wasn't crazy. A missed dinner, a sudden meeting, a recurring name that came up in passing. Jake, the editor from that video call. She mentioned him once at brunch with friends, called him hilarious, and a genius with structure. I asked if he was single, pretending to be casual. She said she didn't know. Didn't know. As if she hadn't been on a video call with him at home, whispering like they were sharing secrets. I filed that away too. She began mentioning cities. Trips that weren't officially booked but maybe happening. I asked if I could come along, turn it into a getaway. She hesitated. It's going to be all meetings, Mark. You'd just be bored. Maybe I would've. But I also knew that wasn't the point. The point was I was being cut out. She hadn't cheated yet. Not physically, as far as I could prove. But emotionally. Emotionally, she was already gone. And every new piece of this mosaic, every quiet lie, every sudden lock, every change in schedule, was fitting together to form a picture I didn't want to see. But I saw it anyway. And I knew, in my gut, that something irreversible had begged *N. All I needed now was proof. And I was going to find it. Silently. I didn't go looking for the truth that day. That's the part people never believe. They assume there's always a dramatic decision, some moment where you say that's it, I'm gonna spy. But real life doesn't work like that. Sometimes the truth just slips through a crack you didn't even know was there. It started with her tablet. She'd left it charging in the guest room after one of her late-night work calls. That alone was unusual. Normally, it never left her side. But that night, she came home tired, distracted, kissed my cheek like muscle memory, and went straight to the shower. The tablet buzzed once on the nightstand. Just once. I ignored it. I didn't want to be that guy. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, telling myself that trust still mattered. That if I crossed that line, there'd be no going back. Then it buzzed again. Not a message. A notification. Camera upload complete. That stopped me cold. I frowned, leaned closer, and read it again. Upload complete. From her tablet. The cloud icon was still spinning, like it had just finished swallowing something whole. My first thought was innocent. Maybe a screenshot *T. Maybe a stupid photo of coffee foam or a page from a manuscript. She took reference photos all the time. Still, my hand moved before my brain finished arguing. I opened the gallery. There was only one video. Timestamped 2 days earlier. Duration, 43 seconds. I remember hesitating, my thumb hovering over the screen. I told myself I could stop, that I didn't have to press play, that whatever was there would change everything. I pressed play anyway. The camera angle was shaky at first, like someone setting the device down. Then it steadied. The room came into focus. It wasn't our bedroom. Neutral walls. Generic art. A hotel room. I recognized it instantly, not because I'd been there, but because every hotel room looks the same when it's paid for in secrecy. Then Lena stepped into frame. She was laughing. Not the polite laugh she gave me lately. The real one. The one that used to belong to us. She was wearing that gray sweater again. The one she'd told me was mine. I saw it clearly now. Long sleeves, worn cuffs, stretched collar. It wasn't mine. Jake stepped into frame next. The editor. The man from the call. He put his hands on her waist like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like he'd done it 100 times. She leaned into him without hesitation. No nerves. No second thoughts. They kissed. Not rushed. Not guilty. Comfortable. Familiar. I didn't feel anger right away. Or sadness. Or shock. I felt quiet. Like my body shut something down to protect me. I noticed details instead. The bedspread. The open suitcase on the floor. Her purse on the chair. The hotel receipt on the desk. The date. The city. And then, worse, the payment notification that popped up briefly in the corner. Paid with card ending in 4821. Her card. She hadn't even let him pay. The video ended with her reaching toward the camera, smiling, saying something I couldn't hear as she turned it off. Like she was documenting a memory. Like this was something worth saving. I locked the screen. Didn't throw the tablet. Didn't yell. Didn't even sit down. I just stood there for a long time, staring at my own reflection in the dark glass. So this was it. Not a suspicion. Not a pattern. Not a mosaic. The full picture. I deleted nothing. Forwarded nothing. I didn't need copies. The image was already burned into me. When she came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, humming to herself, I didn't react. She asked if I wanted tea. I said sure. She smiled. That same distant smile. We had dinner later. She talked about work. About deadlines. About how exhausting Jake was lately. She actually said his name out loud. Casually. Like he wasn't the man I just watched her kiss in a hotel room. I nodded. Chewed. Swallowed. I helped her carry her shopping bags to the bedroom afterward. The same bags she'd come home with that afternoon, cheerful and glowing. I folded one of her sweaters while she brushed her hair. That was the strangest part. Not the video. Not the betrayal. But how normal everything felt afterward. Like the world didn't care that something sacred had just died. That night, she slept peacefully. Curled away from me, phone clutched to her chest. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. Counting each inhale like it was a countdown. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I planned. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek before leaving. Said she'd be late. Said she had meetings all day. I told her to drive safe. Then I waited until the door closed and the house went silent again. I went back to the guest room, picked up the tablet, opened the video one last time, not to torture myself, but to remind myself that this was real. That I wasn't imagining it. That I wasn't overreacting. Then I turned the screen off. I didn't confront her. Not then. Because I realized something important in that moment. She thought she was in control. She thought she'd hidden everything. Deleted messages. Cleared folders. Told just enough lies to keep me confused. She didn't know the cloud remembered. She didn't know the truth had already surfaced. Quietly, cleanly, without drama. And I wasn't going to ruin that advantage by reacting. I made breakfast, answered emails, took out the trash. We had dinner together again that night, in silence, for the last time. The morning after I saw the video, I woke up before my alarm. Not because I couldn't sleep. I actually slept deeper than I had in weeks, but because something inside me had gone quiet. Not numb, focused, like a switch had flipped from hoping to knowing. Lena was still asleep, turned away from me, her phone tucked under her pillow like always. I watched her for a moment, not with anger, not even sadness. Just observation. The way you look at a place you're about to leave for good, trying to memorize it even though you know you won't miss it. I got up, showered, dressed, moved through the apartment without rushing. I didn't slam doors or sigh loudly. I didn't need her to wake up yet. She did anyway. By the time I was buttoning my shirt, she was sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "You're up early," she said, her voice still soft with sleep. "Yeah," I replied. "Busy day." She nodded, stretched, then stood and walked toward me like she always used to. Instinctively. Automatic. She leaned in, arms lifting for that half-asleep goodbye hug we'd done 1,000 times before. I stepped forward too. And then she stopped. Her arms dropped mid-air. Her face changed, not shocked, not confused. Closed. Controlled. "Don't touch me," she said flatly. "I'm not playing wife right now." The words landed cleanly. No emotion. No hesitation. Like she was declining an invitation. For a second, I almost smiled. Not because it hurt less, but because it finally aligned. Everything I'd seen, everything I'd felt, everything I'd watched her slowly dismantle now had a voice. I nodded once. Calm. Measured. "All right," I said. "You won't have to." That was it. No argument. No questions. No "what does that mean?" 'Cause I already knew what it meant. She wasn't mine anymore. She'd checked out long before. This was just her saying it out loud, without realizing what she was giving away. I walked past her into the guest room. That room had been storage for years. Old boxes, extra blankets, a desk we never used. I closed the door behind me and locked it, not out of anger, but because something inside me understood boundaries now. I packed light, laptop, documents, passport, toothbrush, a few clothes, things that were undeniably mine. I didn't touch anything shared. I didn't touch photos. I didn't touch the sweater she claimed was mine. When I came out, she was in the kitchen scrolling on her phone. Didn't look up. "You're moving into the guest room?" she asked casually. "For now," I said. She shrugged. "Fine." That was the moment. Not the video. Not the lie. Not the betrayal. That shrug. That was when the switch fully flipped. I realized something important then. She hadn't lost me yet. She assumed I was still there. Still waiting. Still hoping she'd circle back when she was done experimenting with someone else's attention. She thought this was temporary. I didn't correct her. That day I went to work like normal. Answered emails. Sat in meetings. Drank bad coffee. No one noticed anything different. And that was the strangest comfort. Knowing the world kept turning even after your marriage quietly ended over breakfast. When I came home, the guest room was exactly how I'd left it. She hadn't checked. Hadn't asked. Hadn't followed. We passed each other in the hallway like polite strangers. She talked about her day. I listened. She asked about mine. I answered in full sentences, no more, no less. No emotion. No warmth. That night, I heard her laughing on the phone in the bedroom. Same laugh as in the video. I didn't flinch. I didn't put on headphones. I let it exist because it no longer belonged to me. I slept better than I had in months. Over the next few days, she grew confused. Not worried. Confused. She noticed I stopped initiating conversation. That I stopped asking questions. That I stopped reacting. I wasn't cold, I was neutral. There's a difference, and people feel it immediately. She tried small things. Asking if I'd eaten. Mentioning a show we used to watch. Standing a little too close in the kitchen like she was testing something. I stayed polite, distant, unmoved. One night she said, "You're being weird lately." I looked at her calmly. "I'm respecting your space." She frowned. "That's not what I meant." "I know," I replied, and went back to my laptop. That's when it started to sink in. Not that she'd hurt me, but that she was losing access. She didn't apologize. Didn't explain. Didn't confess. She didn't need to. I already had the truth, and she didn't know that. What she did know was that something had changed, and it wasn't in her control anymore. The silence grew heavier each day. Not tense. Final. And in that silence, I understood something clearly for the first time since this all began. She hadn't broken me. She'd released me, and she wouldn't realize it until it was too late. You think about how you'll react. For weeks, maybe months, even before you admit to yourself that it's happening, you imagine it. The moment you find out for sure. The confrontation. The shouting. The "how could you?" The dramatic exits. But the truth is, when the damage is that complete, when it's not suspicion anymore but fact, the most surprising reaction isn't rage. It's clarity. And silence. That's what I chose. Not because I was weak. Not because I didn't care. But because I'd already accepted what she hadn't. It was over. There was nothing left to argue for. Nothing left to save. So I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't give her the scene she probably expected. I went to work like normal. Came home like normal. Ate dinner alone or with her in that hollow silence we both pretended was peace. And then, quietly, I started pulling the threads. First, the accounts. We had been fully entangled: banking, utilities, insurance, subscriptions. You don't think about how much your life is fused together until you start the process of separation. I didn't slam doors. I didn't shut her out immediately. I just loosened the knots. I logged out of all our shared streaming apps. Changed the passwords. She texted me that night. "Hey, did Netflix log out?" I replied, "Yeah, I'll send you the new info later." But I didn't. I canceled the joint Spotify, the meal kits, the gym membership we signed up for but never used. Each click was quiet, methodical, unemotional. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was reminding myself, this is mine again. Then came the bank. We had a shared checking account and 2 credit cards. I'd always managed the finances. Lena liked it that way, or said she did. Now, she'd taken to calling her purchases separate, even while still swiping our shared card. So I opened a new account in my name. Moved my direct deposit. transferred my savings. Slowly, invisibly. The joint card I left open. For a while. Until the morning she bought herself flowers and a $90 bottle of perfume. I closed it that afternoon. She found out the next day. It had rained overnight. I heard the door open around 7 a.m. The quiet shuffle of her steps down the hallway. The sound of the card reader at the building's entry gate failing. Once, twice, 3 times. Then her footsteps came back. Faster. She knocked on the guest room door. Mark. I opened it slowly. She was standing there, soaked from the rain, mascara smudged just enough to look accidental. Not crying. Not yet. Just frustrated. Confused. My card's not working. Did something happen? I nodded once. Calm. Yeah. I closed it. What? Why? We're not sharing finances anymore. Since when? I held her gaze. Since you stopped sharing your life with me. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. You could have told me. I just did. She blinked. You're really doing this? I already did. Then I closed the door again. She didn't knock after that. But that was the beginning of her unraveling. That week, she started leaving things in the hallway. First, it was passive. A Polaroid of us from the mountains, tucked under my door. A mug that used to sit on my desk, placed gently on the guest room dresser. A folded hoodie of mine she used to wear, laid across the couch. Then it got bolder. A handwritten note. Can we talk? I don't like this distance. I left it where I found it. Then came the blanket. The one we'd bought together at a street market years ago, on a trip we both claimed was just what we needed. It was soft, heavy, with this weird embroidery on one edge we never figured out the meaning of. She left it at the foot of the guest room bed. I folded it and set it in the hallway. The next morning it was back. She didn't say anything about it. Neither did I. That's when I realized the silence wasn't just mine anymore. She had started hearing it, too. It filled the spaces between our footsteps. It sat at the table with us during breakfast. It crept into the places where conversations used to live. She asked, one day, when I passed her in the kitchen, "Why are you being so cold?" I didn't answer right away. Just opened the fridge, poured water, closed it again. "I'm not cold," I said finally. "I'm quiet." She frowned. "That's not the same thing." "It is now." Later that week, she left a postcard on my desk. It was from that same Seattle trip. The back had a note she'd written me that day but never sent. It said, "You make me feel like I belong to something good." I flipped it over, looked at the photo, the city skyline, the one that replaced our picture on her lock screen. Then I slid the postcard into the drawer without a word. She was watching from the hallway. I didn't look up. That night she came home late. I was on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket. Not ours. One I'd bought 2 days earlier from a store she didn't know. She stood behind the screen door for a moment, unsure if she should step outside. Then she did. "I miss you," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. "You're not going to say it back?" I didn't answer. She sat down anyway, just a few feet away. We watched the city lights blink in silence. After a while, she said, "I feel like I'm losing you." And I said, "You already did." She didn't cry. She just nodded, like she'd finally caught up to a reality I'd been living in for weeks. That was the last time she tried to talk at night. The next morning, she packed a small bag and stayed at her sister's for the weekend. When she came back, I'd moved some of her things into storage boxes. Nothing drastic, just the things she never touched anymore. Books, scarves, a stack of magazines from that editor Jake's company. She noticed. She didn't say anything, but the silence between us stretched longer. And for the first time, she started looking unsure. Like maybe I wasn't waiting for her after all. Like maybe this wasn't a punishment, but a boundary. One I wasn't interested in moving anymore. 2 weeks later, she showed up at the annual charity event we used to attend together. Alone. She wore the dress I once said made her look like home. I almost didn't notice her. I was there already, new suit, new circle. A quieter confidence I hadn't felt in months. I wasn't trying to make a point. I just no longer revolved around her. She walked toward me like she expected something. Maybe a smile, maybe recognition. I gave her neither. Just a nod, polite, distant. Then I turned back to the conversation I was in. A staff member stepped between us, firm but kind. Private guest list only. For a second, her face broke. And that was when she finally saw it. She wasn't in my world anymore. Not because I'd erased her, but because she had quietly, carelessly walked out of it, and I'd simply chosen not to chase her. A month later, she found me, through an old friend, asking for 5 minutes. We met at a cafe. She looked smaller somehow, hands curled around a paper cup she barely touched. "Why didn't you answer any of my messages?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. I met her eyes, calm. "You said you weren't playing wife. I believed you. You wanted space, I gave it to you." She blinked hard, like she was holding back something too late to matter. She opened her mouth again, but I raised my hand gently. "No need," I said. "You lit the match. Don't act surprised the fire caught." I stood, buttoned my coat, and walked out. Not to hurt her, not for drama, but to save the only person I still owed anything to, myself.